Hey guys, what is going on? So today I wanted to talk about a very endurance style training that I've been doing over the past few months that has yielded some pretty crazy results for me. Results that I really didn't think I was capable of achieving this late in my lifting career, but they have been some pretty impressive results and I'm really excited about them. I made a video a couple months ago talking about kind of starting this style of training and how it's been beneficial. Well, that trend has just continued, and I did have a little bit of a setback in terms of my training, and I think a lot of it was because I was not focusing on that style, or I was not implementing that along with my normal programming. So I'm back to doing what was working, and I feel like I'm already getting some of the benefits of that. So this style of training that has worked so well for me, it not only improves your work capacity, it improves the size of your muscles, it improves your strength, but you have to be able to program it intelligently. And that's something that I've kind of run into issues with over the past few months. So I've kind of been navigating through trying to get this to work and trying to keep the progress rolling. And ultimately, I've just kind of landed on you need to undulate this. It's not something that you just keep ramping up forever. But that being said, still had tremendous results even despite going through those issues. So I want to talk about what exactly it is that I'm doing, which again, if you watched my video from a couple of months ago, it's pretty much unchanged from that. But I will elaborate a little bit further on how I implement this into my training program. And it's really a supplemental way of training. This is not a way that you spend 5 days a week training. It's something that I basically just add on to on my free day. And depending on how I want to structure my free day, I may train this way. I may kind of go a little bit more of a traditional route, but it's not something you don't need to completely change your programming. You can still run normal program and add something like this on top, or maybe you could swap one day out. This is not something that replaces normal training. It just adds on top of it. And so this style of training, or this method that I use, is basically focusing on improving our work capacity. And kind of what I've learned over the past few months is I think it is improving our mitochondrial efficiency. So I've been reading a little bit more about mitochondria, and the thing that kind of got me into thinking this way is not any of the new evidence that we have on mitochondria being extremely important for like every process in our body. But the thing that really put this idea in my head was actually a book from, I believe it's decades ago, but I have it behind me. It is from Frederick Hatfield, also known as Dr. Swat, and he talked about holistic training being the key to maximizing your results. And essentially, holistic training is not just focusing on mechanical tension, not just focusing on low reps, not just focusing on high reps, but doing a variety of things. And this is pretty like anti-science-based lifting. It's very against the norm to focus on things like pump, to do higher rep sets, to do, 30-second rest periods, which for me, it may even be a little bit less than that. It's a combination of these things that I think are essentially working on our ability to do more work over time. And it's working on our metabolic efficiency. And kind of what I've come to understand is not only is this training the mitochondria, but it's kind of a feedback loop where as we build the ability to do this kind of stuff, it aids other parts of our training in conjunction with that. And that allows us to raise our ceiling for what we're capable of doing in this style of training. And so another way to think of it is that normal training and progressive overload and increasing the amount of weight that we lift has its place in aiding this style of training. And this style of training allows us to benefit more from the traditional training. So I think they go together, and I think they help you maximize your size and strength. And I've actually seen a lot of strongmen do something somewhat close to this, not saying that they train the exact style that I do, but adding in endurance training, which is kind of a fundamental part of strongman training. Crazy enough how that produces the strongest athletes in the world. Seems pretty interesting, maybe counterintuitive, maybe there's all incredibly genetically gifted, or maybe some process of their training and one of the outcomes of that style of training is impactful for producing maximum strength, which in general, science-based lifting seems to be focused on strength first and foremost, and that's the most important thing, and mechanical tension is the most important thing, but yet they're not the strongest people in the world. So kind of interesting. But anyway, the style of training that I'm talking about, I kind of make it out to be just German volume training. That's kind of the goal that I have for myself. And the way that I'll do this is I'll just have one day a week. That's my free day. And I just pick bodybuilding movements that are pretty stable, something that's not particularly taxing for the entire body. And I just aim to do 10 sets of 10 with it with 30-second rest periods. Now, I don't typically get super close to filling out the 10 sets. But that is the overarching goal of the weight that you pick. So let's say you pick, 40 pounds on an exercise. You may start out, you may only be able to do 4 sets of 10. And the way this kind of works is maybe that first set of 10, you're leaving 10 reps in the tank. It's hard to say because there is so much of a difference between the normal weight that you could use and what you use for something like this. And so let's say you could normally do 60 pounds, then you do 40 pounds, whatever it is, might leave 10 reps in the tank, only get to rest 30 seconds. So something that otherwise wouldn't be particularly fatiguing, doing 10 reps of a 20 rep max, but then 30 seconds later you go again. Maybe at this point you're leaving in 7 or 8 reps in the tank. Then that's a little bit more difficult. Then you see that drop off after you rest another 30 seconds. Maybe you leave 3 to 4 reps in the tank on the next set. These are just random numbers. I don't actually test how many reps in the tank I have with something like this. But then you go ahead and you go, okay, my last set, I hit my set of 10, but it's pretty hard. Maybe I had 1 rep in reserve. Maybe I had 2, maybe I had 0. That following set is probably going to be pretty hard to hit with a 30-second rest period. And so you may cap out at 4 sets. Then the next week you come back and you may get 5, you may get 6. What I've noticed is progressing from 3 or 4 sets to 5 or 6 can be pretty difficult. But then you may go from 6 sets and then the following week you may get like 9. And again, I think the reason for this is the amount of reps that you leave in reserve on that first set kind of dictates the pace of where you're going with this. So if you're leaving 10 reps in the tank, that's going to dwindle. But if you have 15, 20, the relative fatigue that each set gives you is so minimal that the drop off is not enough to actually get you to the point where you can't finish a set after 10. And so you basically work your way up over the course of weeks. You keep it at 40 pounds and you just do more density. So you're really not, you're doing more reps, you're doing more volume, but you're not necessarily progressively overloading in the normal sense of adding weight or adding reps. Again, you are adding reps, but only to your subsequent sets. And so then you get to the point where you do 10 sets, and then that weight is probably too easy at that point. And even if it wasn't too easy that particular day, the following weeks it would just be too easy. And so then you up the weight, you start over. Typically, you don't want to up the weight where you're not able to hit at least 3 sets. I like to keep it 3 to 4 minimum. Then again, you just work your way up. It doesn't really matter what weight you're using. It's more about getting in that work density with whatever weight is in the ballpark of being challenging enough. And I think the idea of progressive overload and how we say, oh, we have to add 5 pounds to the bar so that our body can adapt. I think this is BS. I think if you did 200 pounds last week, you can absolutely still grow. You can absolutely still get a stimulus with 200 pounds the next week. Even if you don't add a rep, you are still working in that ballpark of something being challenging. And this idea where we get this progressive overload anxiety that, hey, we didn't add weight to the bar this week, therefore is a failure. Well, you worked with a weight that was challenging and is capable of producing a stimulus. And in this context, we're using a weight that's significantly less challenging, and we still produce enough of a stimulus to be able to grow. And so I think in this particular context of being able to basically make a lightweight easy, it kind of opens up the whole gym for you. Then you go and you're using this machine that you maxed out 2 years ago, and you're like, hey, I found a way to make this hard. I've actually done this with leg extensions. So I'm at the point now where I have maxed out like the main leg extension that I use. And it's not to say that I can't do single leg. And this is higher reps too. This is like, 10, 15 reps on the leg extension, not like, some people do sets of 5. And I'm squeezing at the top and everything like that. Well, I can go on a leg extension and do this style of training, and I have to drop the weight dramatically. And that's an interesting part of it, is that you'll notice that you'll be so dramatically weaker in certain lifts than others using this style of training. And I think that represents a massive opportunity for a deficiency in whatever it is that you're lacking, right? So if I can do 300 pounds for a set of 10 to 15 on the leg extension, and then I go put 100 pounds and I try and do, 10 sets of 10 and I can't even come close, Well, what is going on in the body that we are incapable of progressing with? Why can't we get the outcome that we want? Why can't we continue to progress? Why is it so hard? I think it's because there's a deficiency there. Whereas if I use another body part that I think is probably more kind of used to doing some of these easier weights, or maybe has more slow twitch fiber work done, or whatever it is, I'm significantly better at that. And so I've noticed that some lifts I'm able to go pretty close to my normal working weight, and another lift's not even close. And what I've noticed for myself, interestingly enough, is that it tends to be the lower body lifts that I am not particularly good at doing these types of this style of training. And my theory on that is that I have a higher percentage of fast twitch fibers. So the amount of fatigue that I get in the lower body, and I'm saying in the lower body, I have relatively fast twitch fibers. And so with that, when I'm working and I'm training those slower twitch fibers in this context, it becomes extremely difficult to maintain that level of performance and to be able to do set after set after set. And that's a deficiency that I think I can benefit significantly from. And I've noticed when I do higher rep sets, or when I do more endurance style training for the lower body, they seem to grow a lot better than when I do kind of more like, hey, I'm just trying to lift as much weight as possible. And on the flip side, I think my upper body, I've always seen the best results when I do kind of those higher rep sets or more endurance style training. And I feel like that is, something where I've needed to do that because I'm not particularly fast twitch in the upper body, whereas the lower body, I am fast twitch. And so I've worked on those deficiencies a lot more in one area. And then in the other area, I still have a lot of work to do to kind of bring that up to par. So anyway, that style of training, you can do this with, whatever body parts that you feel. For me, I kind of will do it with like chest, triceps. I've done a little bit of shoulders. I've done a little bit of legs, but realistically, I don't think you should let this completely overtake your normal training, because this will cause fatigue and this will impact your training as those poundages go up. So when you start training like this and it's not particularly heavy weight, it may not be all that fatiguing, but as the weight rises over the weeks, you'll notice that it probably impacts your normal training more and more. And as that volume continues to increase, well, that can be impactful to the PRs that you hit on a normal basis. And at that point in time, it may be beneficial to drop the volume, go back down. Maybe you up the weight, but then that means that you're doing significantly less reps. And that should be less fatiguing on your normal training. And so let's say I'm doing 9 sets of 10, and normally I'd want to see if I can do the 10 sets of 10. Well, maybe you want to say, hey, let me add some weight and then thus remove a little bit of the fatigue by doing significantly less sets. That's going to impact my normal training less. And as you drop that overall volume, you get the higher strength levels in the rest of your training. That's going to allow you to do more weight in the future. And you're working on your work capacity doing that style of training on, in my case, the free day. If you want to schedule this on, a Sunday or whatever day that you may not normally train, or, maybe a day where you have a bro day or something like that, you could throw that in and do some isolations with that. And just kind of have a fun day. I don't think there's a whole bunch of progressive overload going on here, or you don't have that feeling that you have to have that anxiety of hitting a certain number. It's more like, hey, I'm just trying to get a lot of work in. And then you can just kind of go in the gym and just rest, do short rest periods, and then just bang out a bunch of reps. And it doesn't have to be as structured as I'm saying here. But I think that style of training, which is something I've done in the past where I wasn't really counting reps, but I was just getting a lot of work in. Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at here. I've just done it in a little bit more of a structured way. And then again, undulating that, allowing that volume to rise. And then once you see that impact your normal training, drop that volume back down. Normal training should titrate up. And then as you build that work capacity again, rinse and repeat that cycle. And it should allow you to improve both the fast twitch and the slow twitch, improve your work capacity, I think, in the context of being beneficial for the mitochondria. That could be a big element of this as well. So it's hard to say exactly what is going on here, but it's one of those things that just through observation has worked. And even if it's against kind of science-based lifting, It seemed to work really well for me. So maybe give it a shot. As far as how this impacts mitochondria, I'm still learning a little bit about that, but I have been doing a lot when it comes to supplementing with things that are beneficial for mitochondria. And I know a lot of people aren't into supplements. I very much am. And so benefiting mitochondrial capacity in this context could have aided my results a lot more than it would for somebody else who's not taking any supplements. But then I've also been doing stuff, just in terms of getting the nutrients in through my food or trying to get that in through supplements. Red light therapy is something that can be beneficial for mitochondria. So even though that's not a supplement, could be beneficial if you live somewhere where you can get out and see, the sun when the red light is actually naturally occurring. That could be beneficial in terms of managing your stress and cortisol and how that impacts your overall mitochondrial function. There's a lot of elements to this, but I think that's one of the reasons why sometimes it can be so difficult to explain somebody's, complete ability to just be way more tolerable to certain amounts of volume or certain amounts of, just their ability to do a certain work capacity relative to somebody else. I think there's a huge component of mitochondrial efficiency here that some people are tapping into and some people aren't training like at all. And then there are lifestyle factors as well that contribute to that. A lot of times we see a guy who's like extremely jacked, but he doesn't have the strength to match. I think some of these elements are coming into play and they're all contributing to how the body looks, how the body performs, and people just train in different ways. And so to act as if somebody has a certain level of strength and like, let's say a 1 rep max, and that is applicable to all levels of strength and everything in the gym and how they're supposed to look, I think is just silly. So I think there's so many elements to how our body looks and performs. And that is essentially holistic training. And so if you guys have not gone into researching Frederick Hatfield, also known as Dr. Squat, that's a really good book to look into. That's kind of where I started learning about some of this stuff. And I'm still in the process of learning and I'm still kind of figuring this out, but I have been putting action into it when it comes to my training, and it's really yielded some good benefits. So I just kind of want to share that for anybody who is interested, and hopefully it helps. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I'll keep you updated, and I'll talk to you soon.